My name is Cassandra, and I was 34 years old when I died. I wasn't deeply spiritual. I believed in God, but if I'm honest, He wasn't first in my life. My work, my relationships, worries, and ambitions often came before Him. Then one night, a severe allergic reaction caused my heart to stop for more than 4 minutes. And while doctors fought to bring me back, I encountered Jesus. He showed me something I had completely misunderstood. What actually happens when you put God first every single day. He showed me why so many people have faith but still feel anxious, empty, distracted, and exhausted. And then He showed me what happens when you truly put God first, not just on Sundays, but every single morning. What He said about our phones, our priorities, our hidden idols, our fears, and even our faith is something I will never forget. So if you think this testimony is going to be for someone else, someone more religious, someone more put together, it's not. It's for you, exactly where you are right now. It was a Thursday night in November. Nothing special about that day. I had been stressed at work, arguing with someone I cared about, and I hadn't slept well in weeks. I remember feeling this exhaustion that went deeper than tired, like my soul was worn out. I had a severe allergic reaction to medication I had just been prescribed. My throat closed. My body went into shock. By the time the ambulance arrived, I had already lost consciousness. The doctors later told my family that my heart stopped for several minutes. They worked to bring me back. And during that time, I was somewhere else completely. I wasn't floating above my body like some people describe. I wasn't in a tunnel. What happened to me was different. And it started with a voice. It was a voice I had never heard before, but somehow I knew exactly who it was. Not because it was loud. It wasn't. It was actually quiet. But it carried a weight that I cannot describe in normal words. It went straight through me, and the first thing that voice said to me was this: "Come, I want to show you something." And I went. I don't know how else to explain it. I just moved toward that voice the way you run toward someone you've missed for your entire life. What followed was not a quick flash, it was a long, clear, deliberate conversation. The first thing Jesus showed me was my own life. But He showed it to me from a completely different angle. Like watching a replay, except you're seeing it for the first time. He showed me how I woke up every morning and the first thing I reached for was my phone. Before prayer. Before anything. And He wasn't angry about it. But He was honest. He said, "You kept asking me to be part of your life. But you kept putting yourself in charge of where it was going." He used this image that I still think about constantly. He said, "Imagine a car. You have been asking me to sit in the passenger seat for years. You wanted me nearby. You wanted my help when things got hard. But you kept the wheel. And Cassandra, the wheel determines the destination." And then He said something that I wrote down the second I got back. He said, "Seek first the kingdom. Not second. Not when everything else fails. First." He quoted Matthew 6 verse 33 to me, not in the way a pastor reads it from a pulpit. He said it like He was the one who said it the first time. Because He was. And in that moment I understood that verse in a way I never had from just reading it. He said, "When people seek me first, everything else begins to align. Not because I am a formula, but because I am the source. And when the source is first, everything that flows from it flows correctly." He told me that most people want the results of putting God first, the peace, the direction, the breakthrough, without actually making God first. They want God to bless the life they are already building on their own terms. And He said, "That's not how it works. That has never been how it works." He said the priorities of a person's life reveal what they actually believe about God, not what they say they believe. Anyone can say God is first on Sunday. But what does Monday morning look like? That's where the real answer is. Jesus kept walking me through this. Then He showed me the disciples. Peter, who was completely consumed with fishing. Matthew, whose entire identity was wrapped up in collecting taxes and money. And then Jesus called them. And they left. Immediately. He said to me, "Do you understand what happened in that moment? It was not that fishing and money became evil. It was that something greater came into view. And when people truly see me, the things they were chasing lose their grip." He said that's exactly what happens when someone genuinely commits to putting God first every day. Not just as a spiritual discipline, but as a daily choice. Every morning, a decision. God comes first today. He said, The things that used to feel urgent start to lose weight. The need to impress people. The obsession with comparison. The endless running after things that were never going to satisfy anyway. When I am first, those things begin to shrink naturally. Not because you're trying harder to ignore them, but because something better has taken their place. He referenced Luke 9 verse 23. He said, I said take up your cross daily. Not once. Not at a church camp when emotions are high. Daily. Because the decision has to be made every day. And every time someone makes that decision, something shifts inside them. He told me this is what most people misunderstand about the spiritual life. They think surrender is a one-time event. A dramatic moment. And sometimes it starts that way. But it continues as a daily choice. And the people who make that daily choice consistently, their entire priority system slowly reorders itself. Prayer starts to feel more important than scrolling through their phone. Peace starts to feel more valuable than being popular. Doing what God says starts to matter more than what's comfortable. He said, Cassandra, when I become someone's highest priority, everything else finds its proper place. Not immediately, not all at once, but it begins. Then Jesus showed me something I had completely wrong my entire life. I always connected peace with having things go well. No conflict, no financial stress, no hard relationships. That was peace to me. He said, that is not peace. That is circumstances going in your favor. Those are two completely different things. He brought up Daniel. And the way he talked about Daniel was like he was talking about someone he deeply respected and loved. He said Daniel lived surrounded by a corrupt culture. He was under constant pressure. He had every reason to compromise, to blend in, to put survival first. And Daniel kept praying 3 times a day. Every single day. Even when they made it illegal. Even when it meant being thrown into a den of lions. Jesus said, Daniel 6 verse 10. He went home and opened his windows toward Jerusalem and prayed as he always did. As he always did. That was not heroism in the moment. That was the fruit of a habit. A daily practice of putting God first that had already been built long before the test came. He said, that is what daily surrender does. It builds something in you that holds when the pressure comes. Because the pressure always comes. He then said something about Philippians 4 verses 6 to 7 that I've thought about almost every day since I came back. He said, be anxious for nothing. I meant that literally. Not anxious for most things. Not anxious except for the really serious things. Nothing. But that level of peace is not available to someone who is running their life on their own terms and only turning to God when they run out of options. He explained that the peace that surpasses all understanding, the kind that Paul was talking about, is the result of a life where God is actually first. Not occasionally. Not in theory. First. And then he said something so simple, but it hit me like a weight. The person who starts their day with me carries something different into that day. They are not carrying it alone. He told me that when people spend the first part of their morning with God instead of immediately diving into the noise of the world, something happens in their spirit. Worry loses some of its power. The battle in their mind gets quieter. And instead of panicking first when something goes wrong, they start praying first. Because that's the muscle they've been building. Now I need to be honest with you. There was a part of this conversation with Jesus that was uncomfortable. Not frightening. But uncomfortable in the way that truth is sometimes uncomfortable when it finally finds you. He said, I want to show you what has actually been controlling your life. And I knew immediately that I did not fully want to see this. But I looked. He explained what an idol really is. He said it is not just a statue or something obviously religious. He said an idol is anything that takes the place of God in your heart. Anything that gets the trust, the attention, the first place, that should belong to God. He said in Exodus 20, he said, you shall have no other gods before me. And he emphasized the word before, not beside, before. He said, I do not compete for first place in a person's life. That is not a position I share. And what I want you to understand is that this is not ego on my part. It is design. I made the human heart to be satisfied by me. And when anything else takes that first position, it cannot fill what only I can fill. He showed me the rich young ruler from Mark 10, the man who had followed all the commandments, who seemed genuinely interested in following Jesus. But when Jesus asked him to give up his possessions and follow him, the man walked away sad. Jesus said, he was not a bad person. He genuinely respected me. But money had quietly become his true god. It had the first position in his heart, and he did not even fully know it until that moment. He said, "That is what happens when someone begins to truly put me first. The things that have taken that position without their full awareness begin to surface. Social media, the need for approval, success, relationships, lust, pride. These things reveal themselves. And I know that feels threatening, but I want you to understand why I let them surface." He paused, and the weight of what he said next is something I cannot fully express in words. He said, "A doctor who finds a disease early enough to treat it has given you a gift, even if the diagnosis is painful. I expose what is holding your heart captive because I want to heal it, not condemn you, heal you." He said that when God removes something that has had the first place in a person's heart, he does not leave emptiness. He fills it with himself and nothing. He was very clear about this. Nothing in this world can fill the soul the way God can. He quoted Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11. He said, "I placed eternity in the human heart." That ache people feel, that sense that nothing is ever quite enough, that restlessness even when things are going well, that is not a problem to be solved by more success or more relationships or more comfort. That is a spiritual hunger, and it is only satisfied by me. This was one of the sections of my time with Jesus that I could have stayed in forever, because he talked about faith in a way that I had never heard before. He said, "Faith is not a feeling. People treat it like a feeling. They say they have faith when things are going well and they feel spiritually connected. And they say their faith is struggling when life is hard and God feels distant. But real faith has almost nothing to do with feelings." He talked about Abraham. He said Abraham heard from God and left his hometown without knowing where he was going, without a map, without a backup plan. Hebrews 11 verse 8, "By faith Abraham obeyed." He obeyed before he could see how it was going to work out. Jesus said, "That is what mature faith looks like. It moves before it can see the full picture. It trusts the character of God more than it trusts circumstances." And that kind of faith does not appear suddenly when a crisis hits. It is built slowly, by consistently choosing God first even on the ordinary days. He said when someone commits for 30 days to putting God genuinely first, not perfectly, but consistently, something measurable happens in their faith. He described it almost like a muscle. He said, "Every time you wake up tired and still choose to pray first, that builds something. Every time you choose to forgive someone even when everything in you doesn't want to, that builds something. Every time you stop a compromise before it happens, even when no one would ever know, that builds something." He said those small daily acts of obedience that feel invisible are actually the foundation of a life that can withstand real pressure. He said, Romans 10 verse 17 says faith comes by hearing the word of God. There's a reason I said it that way. The more time a person spends in my word, genuinely, not just checking a box, the more their thinking changes. Fear starts to lose its grip. Hope starts to come back. They stop measuring their problems by how big the problems look and start measuring them by how faithful I have always been. He said, "I want you to tell people this. Faith is not the absence of doubt. Faith is the daily decision to act on what you know about me, even when your feelings are trying to tell you something different." Now here is where Jesus said something that I think most people miss completely when they talk about putting God first. They think it is just about having better quiet times, reading the Bible more, going to church more consistently, and those things matter. But Jesus made clear that what he is after is something much deeper. He said, "When someone truly puts me first, daily, consistently, over time, I do not just improve their spiritual routine. I change who they are." He talked about 2 Corinthians 5 verse 17. He said, "If anyone is in me, they are new creation." I meant that literally, not a reformed version of the old person, not a cleaned up version, new. He brought up Paul. And when he talked about Paul, there was something in his voice, if you can call it a voice, that made clear this was personal to him. He said Paul used to hunt down and persecute the people who followed Jesus. He was genuinely violent toward them, spiritually blind in a way that made him believe he was doing something righteous. He said, "And then he encountered me, and everything changed. Not slowly over years of self-improvement. Changed. Because transformation that comes from me is not the same as behavior modification. It works from the inside out." He said this is what people begin to experience when they genuinely commit to putting God first over 30 days. And he was very honest. He said it won't look dramatic for everyone. For some people it's quiet. But the changes are real. Addictions begin losing their hold. Not because the person is trying harder, but because something inside them is being renewed. Patience shows up where there wasn't any. Kindness becomes a little more natural. The anger that used to be a default reaction starts to slow down. He said, the reason people stay stuck in the same patterns even after years of trying to change is because they're trying to change by their own effort. They're rearranging the outside. But I change people from the inside. And that process requires me to be first. Not as a reward for good behavior, but as the source. He quoted John 15 verse 5 in a way that I want you to really sit with. He said, without me you can do nothing. Not some things. Not the hard things. Nothing. The real, lasting, meaningful things. The things that actually matter, only come from staying connected to me. He said, the greatest miracle I often do in a person's life is not healing their body or solving their financial problem or fixing their relationship, as much as I care about all of those things. The greatest miracle is often making them into the person they were created to be. That is what happens when I get first place. At one point in our conversation, Jesus looked at me and said, I want you to tell people something specific when you go back. He said, tell them that committing to 30 days of genuinely putting me first will not make their life instantly perfect. I am not a vending machine. That is not how this works. But then he said, what it will do is change the direction. And direction determines destination. 30 days of daily surrender will begin to show them greater peace, not because their circumstances changed, but because they are no longer carrying their life alone. Stronger faith, because faith grows when it is exercised. Clearer purpose, because when I am first I begin to make clear why I made them. Freedom from the things that have had quiet control over their heart. And a depth of relationship with me that they did not know was possible. He said, Matthew 6 verse 33 was never just a verse to memorize. It was an invitation. Seek first. First, not as an afterthought, not after everything else has been tried. First. And then watch what gets added. He said the reason most people never experience what that verse is actually promising is not because the promise is not real. It's because they never actually test it. They read it. They nod at it. But they keep living with God in second or third or last place. And then they wonder why their life feels like it's missing something. He said to tell people, the missing thing is not more information. It is not a better routine. It is not a different set of circumstances. The missing thing is me. In the right position. Throughout everything Jesus showed me and said to me, there was one word that he kept returning to. Daily. Take up your cross daily. Luke 9 verse 23. Pray. Not just in crisis. Daily. Choose me. Not just on Sundays. Daily. He said, Cassandra, the people who experience the things I've been describing, the peace, the changed priorities, the growing faith, the real transformation, they are not spiritual giants. They are not people with no problems. They are people who made a decision every morning. Today, I choose God first. That is it. That is the whole practice. He said it is the consistency that builds the life, not the intensity of any single moment. A lot of people have intense spiritual experiences and then return to the exact same life. But the person who wakes up tomorrow and the day after and the day after that and keeps choosing God first, that person's life gradually becomes something completely different. He said, I am not asking for perfection. I never asked for perfection. I asked for daily surrender. Come to me first. Bring me your morning before you bring it to your phone, your worry, your agenda. And watch what I do with a life that is consistently handed to me first. Then suddenly I was back. I don't know exactly how long I was gone. The doctors had their numbers, but my time with Jesus felt both endless and far too short. Then I felt myself being pulled back, and I didn't want to leave. Not because I feared life, but because I didn't want to leave his presence. When I returned to my body, everything felt heavy. I heard machines, voices, and someone calling my name. Then I began to cry. Not from sadness, but from something I still cannot explain. The doctors told me I had been clinically dead for over 4 minutes and that my recovery was unusual. But I know what happened while I was gone. I had encountered Jesus, and I would never be the same. When I came back, Life was still waiting for me. The same stress, the same difficult relationships, the same bills. But I was different. What had once been third, fourth, or last in my life had quietly become first. God. I stopped reaching for my phone first thing in the morning. I started praying before I started panicking. I began recognizing the things that had controlled me: approval, comparison, anxiety, and surrendering them to God. Jesus had shown me that He exposes these things not to condemn us, but to heal us and fill the space they occupied. I became more patient, slower to react, more willing to forgive. I still wasn't perfect, but I was changing from the inside. And Jesus told me why. He said, "Go back and tell them what you saw. Tell them that most people have me somewhere in their lives, but not in first place." The answer is not more striving or willpower. It is daily surrender. Matthew 6 verse 33 is an invitation. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, not after everything else. First. So start there. Tomorrow morning, before your phone, before the news, before your worries, give God the first moment of your day. Then do it again the next day. You don't have to fix your whole life first. You just have to turn toward Him first.